So today I'm going to talk about the urban grooves. But before I go into how the urban grooves became to be, I'll first start with the radio stations. So before all these other radio stations that we have today in Zimbabwe, we used to have 4 radio stations. There was Radio 1, which is what you call Classic FM today. And before it was called Classic FM, it was named SFM. So Radio 1 was a radio station mostly for very slow music, classical music, very, very mature sound. And there were a lot of talk programs on that station. That's what you call Classic 263 today. But we grew to know it as Radio 1. Then from Radio 1, they named it SFM. From SFM, it's now Classic 263. Then from there, we have Radio 2, which is what you now call Radio Zimbabwe. So Radio Zimbabwe, the main focus for it was more on playing the likes of Sungura, Chimurenga music, and a lot of gospel, which was more indigenous gospel music, the likes of the Pastor Haisas, and a whole lot of other musicians. That was where their music was being played. Then Radio 3 is what you call Power FM today. So Radio 3 was more of your urban youth culture sound, more vibey, more dance, and everything that you can talk of which is very urban. That's your Radio 3. Now we call it Power FM. Then Radio 4 was more of an educational radio station, but it catered more also on indigenous music. So more or less what was happening on Radio 2, which is now Radio Zimbabwe. So Radio 4 and Radio 2 were more or less the same, but there were a lot of talk programs on Radio 4. Today we call it National FM. That's Radio 4. So it also catered for Sungura and a lot of indigenous music. So why I've given this background is just to highlight where the urban grooves came in and how it came to be. And mind you, Radio 4, Radio 2, and even Radio 3 also, there was a lot of music coming from Congo. There was a lot of music coming from South Africa, especially South Africa. Dominated the airwaves also. Then Radio 3, which is Power FM, was mostly focusing on international artists. But before that, there were artists in Zimbabwe who were also into urban music. Some of them were not given a chance. Some of them were given a chance. You look at the likes of the Rusike brothers, the ones who did Cecilia. Those were like guys who were doing urban music. It wasn't called urban grooves. I'm going into the urban grooves era. Then you have the likes of Rosala Miller. You have the likes of Fortune Mparutsa. He was also into the urban sound before even this urban grooves era came into the scene. Fortune did the likes of Kure Kwa Unoyenda. He recorded the likes of Sangoma, the original, not the one which was on the same album with Kanamatombo, the original Sangoma. in quite a lot of tracks, which was a tough journey for him also. Then after that, he left. He went to live in the UK. He worked with Mark Morrison. He was on that album, Return of the Mac. He was part of the production team on that album. He even did the backing vocals for the song Tripping, which is on the same album, which was recorded by Mark Morrison. Then he came back. That's when the Kanamatombo era came in, and all the songs which followed after that. But that was before the Urban Grooves era. So I'm just trying to highlight those guys who were also within that space. Dancehall has always been there in Zimbabwe. It was called reggae dancehall, and even on Saturday evenings, I don't know if it was Munya Brown or Dennis Brown, one of those. Then later on, it was taken over by Innocent Manasi. There was a reggae program dedicated just for reggae Saturday evenings. So before this Zim Dancehall thing, it was just reggae. Trans-City Crew has always been there. We have got the likes of Major E, Booker T. I think there was another guy who was called Yapi Pantan. So that's within the reggae scene. And Potato, those are some of a few guys who were doing dancehall or reggae dancehall, but sometimes some of them they were toasting. It wasn't called rhyming, they were toasting. If you go back into time also, if you have listened to Mugarandega by Thomas Mafumo, you hear Tobias Ariketa. He was featured on that song on Mugarandega. He's the one who was going like, so me say, the guy was rhyming or rapping, but those days they called it toasting. So dancehall, reggae has always been there. Then hip hop, we have had guys like Piece of Ebony. We have had guys like Chamnor Wakwenda, that's Mischief, and Chamu is the first hip hop artist to go commercial in South Africa. Everyone was underground. He was the first hip hop artist to be signed by a major record label and commercializing hip hop in South Africa. But yes, he's Zimbabwean. So we have had guys like Mau Mau, that's Shingirai Sabeta. It might have been called rap those days, but those are the guys who were doing rap and hip hop. Then we have had the guys like the Makoni guy, what was he called? Kingpin. He's one of the greatest ever to emerge from our country. So I'm just highlighting that hip hop was there. It might have been called rap or whatever you want to call it, but it has been there before the Urban Grooves era. So then David Chifunyitse had this on sound which was more Afro-popish and stuff, but he came in before all these Urban Grooves and all that. He was already there. Then in 2002, that's when the revolution came into play, Urban Grooves. But us as Shem and Nathan, we had already recorded our first single in 1996. By then we were below 20. Yeah, we didn't know anything about music, but we recorded with the help of Fortune Imparusa. Then this will be a story for another day though. But I was just highlighting that we came into the scene before the Urban Grooves era, and one of our songs actually became part of the top 100 songs in 2001. So that was before the Urban Grooves era. I remember even Roy and Royce were called the Romero before Roy and Royce. So there are a lot of guys who are trying to push, but the notion in Zimbabwe has always been that we don't support our own. In that time, it was like you have to sing like this so that we can play your music. So we recorded our first single. It was an R&B single, English. Then 2001, that's when we were able to release it, because the doors were being shut everywhere we went. Then luckily 2001, we made a breakthrough. We kept on trying, and it was playlisted on Radio Zimbabwe, which is now Radio Zimbabwe, which was Radio 2 by then, and Radio 3 also. But it was a very R&B song. We featured Fortune Mparusa on that song also. He's the one who recorded it. 2001, it became a hit, and it was voted as one of the best 100 songs for that year. Then 2002 came in. That's when we did our Aripo and Lufara songs. The rest is history. Yes. So now, the term urban grooves is a revolution. It's not a type of music, as you call it out there, or a genre. It's a revolution. So it's a mixture of everything, excluding Sungura. Sungura was never part of the urban grooves. The urban grooves is like more for the urban culture and stuff. The other genre which was incorporated into the urban grooves is dancehall. It became very strong when the urban grooves movement came into play. So the one who made it possible is Jonathan Moyo, Professor Jonathan Moyo, Innocent Chuma, Delani Makalima. Those are the guys who made sure that the urban sound and those people who were being rejected are given a chance. And they were using the term local is lekker. That same concept was taken as it was from South Africa. South Africa was going through a revolution that time also. So they termed it, the slogan was local is lekker. And if you went to Power FM those days, you will see there was a poster which was written local is lekker. So they took the same concept from South Africa and implemented it in Zimbabwe, which worked very well. And a lot of artists from Zim dancehall today and hip hop are directly linked to what Jonathan Moyo and what Innocent Chuma fought for and what Delani Makalima fought for, supporting local music. So when it was implemented, the plug was Innocent Chuma, the first producer who became well known as a businessman within the urban grooves is Delani Makalima. But there were other guys behind the scenes also, but I'm talking about the prominent ones that everyone knows about. So then it went on. Music got played. People enjoyed. But where I'm going with this now, on my second video, I'm going to talk about what went wrong. That will be in the second video that I'm going to do. Part 2 of this video, I'm going to talk about what went wrong. But today I'm just going to talk about how people benefited from this era. A lot of guys became well known. Music was accepted by Zimbabweans. We started seeing more shows which were not only based on the Sungura music genre. More producers started popping up. All I can say, employment was created because of the urban grooves era. But coming back to my point also, why we did not have that urban culture. A lot of people were denied the chance of being heard on radio. And I'm going to go back to time also. If you did not know, even the likes of Dr. Oliver Mtukudzi, the late, may he so rest in peace, at some point before all these other albums that he recorded, he used to sing rock and roll, even with Dr. Thomas Mafumo. A lot of guys, because they were not given a chance on radio stations, our music was not accepted. So that mentality stayed with our own DJs. Till today, we have that mentality that whatever comes from outside is better than ours. So that's how you ended up seeing the likes of the late Dr. Oliver Mtukudzi singing rock and roll like your daddy was a Rolling Stone. It's something that you won't believe, but it happened. Even the likes of Dr. Thomas Mafumo, because our own sound was not being accepted. So this thing has been going on for a very long time, where our music is being blue-ticked by the radio stations, even when our own DJs came into play. Those that you thought were going to support local music, they also kept on supporting artists from outside. And sometimes it feels like we are musically, we are a colony of South Africa. Nigeria also has taken over Zimbabwe, not talking about the Western music and stuff. So this is just an introduction of how the urban grooves came into play, the part that Professor Jonathan Moyo played when he implemented the 75% local content, which was a good thing because it empowered a lot of people, even a lot of artists. Every artist who is doing any other genre, which is not jazz or sungura, even those who are touring today, they are all direct beneficiaries of what was implemented long back by Professor Jonathan Moyo and all the guys who worked behind the scenes. So I think that's about it today. On my next video, I am going to talk about what went wrong and why the revolution ended, and everything that you might want to know about the urban grooves era and who sabotaged the urban grooves. It's our own people, not those who listen to music. I'll do another video very soon and I'll tell you who sabotaged, why they sabotaged it. Then from there we carry on. Thank you so much.